Sources of energy. Solar power has become an easily accessible source of energy. Moreover, it has proven to be cost effective. SENER is a relatively new and leading privately owned engineering enterprise here in South Africa's alternative energy sector with a strong focus on solar power. And for more on that, we are very pleased to be joined in studio by the Regional Managing Director of SENER Southern Africa, Mr. Mbanjwa. Siyabonga, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, and thank you very much for having me.
Look, I mean, we understand that SENER is a relatively new company, but give us a bit of a background history. What is SENER?
I could say it's relatively new in South Africa, but we're a 60-year-old company. We're a technology and engineering group. Originally, we started off as a marine engineering group designing ships, but over the years, we've gotten involved in various sectors. And more recently, we are now involved in power, oil and gas. So in the South African market, we are focusing particularly in the renewable energy market, exploring concentrated solar power.
Why particularly that focus on solar renewable power, Sebo?
Well, firstly, it's clean energy. So you can, as opposed to fossil fuels we know do emit
gas emissions.
They have gas emissions that are negative to the environment. You've got issues around, so that's that is. We also, it's also renewable, meaning that it's coming from the sun, and the sun is going to be there forever. But most importantly, what we do like about concentrated solar power is the fact that you can store the energy. There has been a lot of talk about renewables not being able to store energy and not being able to release and provide power to the market and the community when it's needed the most, which is normally in the afternoons and in the evenings. What is different about concentrated solar power is that we are actually able to provide power even in the evening. So even when the sun has gone down, we're still able to provide power.
Tell us about this. It must be an interesting process how you store that power, Siyabonga.
Absolutely. Basically, what happens is that we use a parabolic trough. That is where the sun's rays are basically concentrated. From there, it's reflected onto a tube, which is full of what we call a heat transfer fluid. That heat transfer fluid gets heated up to about 500 degrees Celsius. From there, it then goes on to a power block. There's a steam generation process that takes place. That is steam at a fairly high temperature. From there, this drives the turbine, and from then you have the generator, which is basically the normal generation process, electricity generation process. From there, we are then able to store the heat that we are no longer using in what we call molten salts. Those molten salts are stored in fairly large tanks.
Okay.
And as and when the sun then goes down, we are then able to release that heat, and that heat then goes through the entire process again, generating steam, driving the turbine, generating electricity. We then release it onto the grid, and Eskom is then able to distribute it to the market, including the general man in the streets.
Absolutely. But now, does this, I mean, when you store power, you're able to store it even for rainy days? Because I think that's always the issue when people hear about solar power, they think, but what happens when the sun is not there?
Well, exactly. I think there are misconceptions about renewable energy, and these are some of the things that we need to correct. And I think perhaps we need yourselves, such as the media, to assist us in terms of educating the public out there that there are renewable sources that are able to basically store energy and are able to basically generate. So what we basically do is, like I've indicated, in the afternoons, when the sun does go down, we start releasing it, and that can we can start generating electricity for 24 hours a day, the entire evening. So it can happen from 5 o'clock until 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. So if it is raining during that period, then yes, we can also continue generating. So the fact that the weather or that the sun is down does not necessarily have an impact on generation.
Well, I'm sold on that one. I've always wondered about that. Now, Siyabonga, we know that citizens are always the ones that are encouraged to try and use, solar energy sources at home. But what about the private sector? I mean, a lot of private companies companies, you drive at night, you see that the lights are still on, and probably there's still things that are still running within the offices. When are you going to encourage them?
Well, I think as players in this market, we certainly encourage everybody. We encourage businesses. We encourage the ordinary man in the street to conserve as much energy as possible, because obviously if we don't do that, demand is going to go up. And we then have a problem whereby there's a bit of a gap between supply and demand. And if there is a problem whereby demand is above supply, that's when we start having problems around load shedding. So I think it's in our best interest, it's in everyone's best interest to conserve energy and to only utilize it when you absolutely need it. It goes down to what you do at home as well. You know, leaving lights on,
leaving chargers on and it's not, switched off as well.
Exactly. Yes, we do know that, for example, putting solar PV panels on your roof is a little bit costly and so forth. However, there are other initiatives that you can implement.
Like what?
For example, for heating. So instead of using your ordinary geyser, you can install heat pumps, and those heat pumps basically are able to save energy. There are a number of other initiatives, and I think Eskom, as our main sort of utility, has gone through a bit of an education drive, and there's a lot that can be found on their website in this regard.
Let's expand a bit on that. I mean, you talk about demand, Siyabonga, but I'm interested in the cost effectiveness of solar energy. I mean, maybe that's one way to actually sell the product to the people.
Yeah, the cost effectiveness of solar energy, when it comes to, as you know, you get wind, you get solar PV, and you get concentrated solar power. Those are the main sort of technologies within the renewable energy sector. When it comes to concentrated solar power, because we have storage capacity, you'll find that the cost ultimately to the consumer is slightly higher than the cost of some of the other technologies. But there are logical reasons for that, and the reasons are that we've got more benefits. So you'll find that comparative to, say, coal or nuclear, the pricing is there or thereabout. Whereas some of the other technologies have now managed to drop their prices quite a bit. The Renewable Energy IPP Procurement Program, which is a program that the Department of Energy started around 2011, has been able to drop the costs of renewable energy over that period from, say, over 2 rands per megawatt hour to less than R1 per megawatt hour. So the message out there is that we do need to roll out renewable energy more and more so that we can reduce the costs ultimately to the ordinary man in the street. And what we are also saying is that over and above that, we also need to roll out more megawatts for concentrated solar power, because it does come with additional benefits. It comes with the storage as well as the dispatchability that I spoke about a little bit earlier on, so that we can generate electricity for 24 hours a day, just like we can do with coal and with nuclear.
A quick one, Siyabonga. I know we're out of time, they're going to kill me, but I just want to know, I mean, how can solar energy benefit the construction industry? I mean, they seem to be using quite a lot of power.
They are using a lot of power, but I don't think it's only the construction industry. There's the mining industry, there are a number of other industries. I think ultimately it's the fact that it's base load. We're able to provide base load power. We're able to provide power for 24 hours a day. So, streaming or obtaining electricity from concentrated solar power as opposed to coal or nuclear, it means that you are also being responsible to the environment.
Absolutely.
It also means that it's a renewable source. It comes from the sun, which will be there in perpetuity.
So they must just put those solar panels, it's just the storing price or the installation price that is just a bit up there.
Absolutely, but if you look at,
however,
if you look at the long-term benefits, yes, we may have high capital costs when you install it, but if you look at the rate at which electricity is currently going up, okay, and if you look at the rate at which it would then go up once you have you have actually invested. I wouldn't call it spent the money. I would say
investment.
invested. Once you've invested in this technology, you are then able to have better control over your costs over a period of time. So over a period of time, if you look at life cycle costing, which takes your capital cost as well as your operational cost into account, it is more reasonable.
Sabonga, where can people find out more information about SENER?
Well, SENER, you can go onto our website, which is www.engineeringandconstruction.sener, and you can find a lot more information there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being with us. That was the Regional Managing Director of SENER Southern Africa, Mr. Mbanjwa, and he was talking to us about the importance of trying alternative ways of solar energy.